Thank you. I think both Paulina and I touched upon the importance of imagination and presence. Just a quick question for everyone, which we can address as we go along. Can AI create true art? Paulina, over to you.
Okay, just short touching on, can AI create art? For me, no. AI cannot create art. Because, see, when I was referring as the human brain or the human experience as a sponge where we bring in experiences and then we process it, the process is not to put out necessarily information as data, but there's a lot of emotion. So emotion is basically emotion, something to move. It moves us. And there's a lot of see, when a concept comes alive through art at any particular time, it's usually because through art something of a universal feeling that everybody can identify and be touched by it. People have already been feeling something, but they don't quite know how to put it in words. And so I'm just thinking, for instance, of that picture of this, it's an older picture of photograph of a girl in Vietnam War. She's running with her hand extended. So when we all see that, so many people were against that war in the States, and so many people have disgust, but they had not, their emotion inside was not strong enough in an identifiable way that they were not able to move themselves to get something more strong into action. So with art of that kind that summarizes how all of us are internally boiling with some kind of an emotion, that one picture that speaks 1,000 words, literally, it gives voice to all of us who are actually feeling that. So to me, the power of art is that. And so also in therapy, when a child is not able to express themselves, they may not have enough vocabulary, they not have enough ways of saying, but with a picture or with something that comes from the emotion, you can translate that feeling that other human being can identify. And so to me, AI has a lot of input from all over the world, from information for everybody, but there isn't really that universal emotion that needs to connect to. There's just information put together, you know. It's like an average of the nice picture, the average of good summary or whatever. So that's my answer to no, AI cannot create art, my opinion. Thank you.
Okay, we have rejoinders from Tulip, followed by Denise.
Uh, I defer my opinion here. I think AI can be considered art because it depends on like prompting itself is an art, like how you prompt, because you can also create art with on a normal canvas and just make a sketch and say that's art, versus someone who really put in effort and create art, be it a digital piece or it could be a film. Then tomorrow we'll have people saying let's not make films, we should go and watch live plays, or let's not have machines. So I think yeah, it depends on how it's done. So yeah, I believe AI can create art, and the person who prompts, that makes a lot of a difference.
Thank you. Over to you, Denise. And I think, Paulina, you had a response, so you can go after Denise, please.
Yeah, I see both Paulina's perspective and Tulip's. I have just a funny story that probably leans a little more towards Paulina's perspective. Um, so when I created something called an astral travel gong bath, and I had written the meditation, and now I was looking for a visual. And I of course I had pictures of my gong that I could use, but I thought, how cool would it be to somehow imbue the astral aspect? And so I asked ChatGPT to, and I'm pretty good with the prompts, right? I'm pretty good at using those, Anyway, ended up in this huge argument with ChatGPT because it kept giving me a picture that looked like you were on another planet, and I didn't want that as my visual for, an inviting relaxing meditation. It looked like a group of hostile aliens are surrounding a gong, and so I kept going back and saying, "No, this is not what I want. I want you to do this, I want you to do that," and I was very specific, but it could not produce anything that would be, in my mind anyway, would be recognized as something, that could be useful for what I was looking for. So I thought that was quite funny to be going I back and forth, and still ending up it couldn't get past, and I don't know if it was that particular, with OpenAI, if it was just that platform, and maybe they're all a little different, but it was quite funny. I mean, I wasn't really laughing at the time. It was more frustration. But I also have seen the opposite, where some of the art digitally that can be created is beautiful. The challenge going forward, though, is what I see in social media th- is digitally created art or visuals that are made by, like, they're obviously made by AI, but people take them as real, and that to me is where things, and when I say real, I'm talking about if it's portraying people or situations that aren't actually happening, and but it looks realistic enough where, people then believe that, and then you now have what I call in my world toxic discourse, where you're now, people are being misinformed or not understanding what they're looking at, and the question becomes, how do you now tell the difference, and how important is that?
Thank you. Paulina, followed by Joe and then Drake, I think.
Okay. So I just like to make a very distinction because I can see that it's very easily mixed, right? I have a daughter, and as far as I'm concerned, she's a digital artist and she heavily uses AI. And she does fantastic prompts. Then she gets the images and then she makes them look exactly the way she wants. And they express exactly the feeling and the emotion that she wants. How That's how I defined her as actually as an artist. She is the artist, is not AI. So when I'm talking about can AI create art, I am talking about can there be a point where AI is so independent that just with a very minor click of a button, it will produce art? It will never happen. This is no different than another tool to create art. It's like a camera for a photographer. Photographer is not painting the landscape, but they're choosing the light, they're choosing the speed of the lens, they're choosing the elements of the composition. When you are asking AI to give you a picture and then you're bringing that and you're tweaking it. And what my daughter does is she basically starts manipulating it. She changes the colors with her hand, like with her own tools, with a pen, whatever. So it is another extension of a tool, but I still don't call that AI. That's my daughter using AI as a tool. So it's a big difference between the two. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Joe?
Yeah, well, a couple of similar experiences. I remember a book club. My late wife would go to a book club, and one of the novels they read, was they thought particularly heartrending. It was so full of emotion, and of course, I sent along my comment with my wife that was completely unwelcome. I said I could generate this with AI, and of course, this led to a great dust up. Um, and the rebuttal was, but there was so much emotion and channeling sort of the dark side. I said, nothing is more predictable or more easily manipulated than emotion. So when we're thinking about AI, just be warned, that is the one thing AI is going to be good at. So just a word to the wise. And I'm a technologist, so I'm partly to blame. Um, on the happy side, when I have an aunt, I guess a half aunt in Vancouver, and she lost her horse after many, many, many years. So this was a catastrophic loss. So everyone in the family pitched in and made a piece of art to go into a book. So I thought it was a beautiful idea. Of course, being bereft of any artistic talent, I had to use AI. I had no choice. But did I, and to pick up on the point that Tulip first touched on, the effort I put into my prompting. My prompts were almost like multi-page programs. And eventually I got it to produce a rendition of her horse, Boxer, that was so good that it was chosen by everybody, including the heavyweight artists like my mom, as the cover of the book. So, but it's true, there was a lot of me in there. Like I had to fine tune, it was ridiculous. Um, but but ultimately, then to circle back and say, if we take anything of what I touched on earlier about the relationship of art to the fundamental substratum of truth, then AI does have some challenges. So in a more recent time, of course, if there's an art form with which I'm most familiar, it would be poetry. And the one thing AI really can't do at all is write poetry. Its poetry is beyond terrible. Like on the visual side, yes, they might drop you on the moon or put you on the rings of Saturn, but the poetry is unbearably bad. So almost we use it. And so my partner now is a poet, and she's a very tough trainer. Like she sort of falls on the side of art as closer to artifice, that it is, you need to master the craft in order to then express your world or reach other people. Like you have a lot of work to do. So she is a tough taskmaster. And she has found, even though the AIs are terrible at writing poetry, she can train them to be quite good poetry reviewers and to sort of give you non-stupid feedback. So within again, it comes back to the prompting. But we know if you actually got it to try and write anything, it would go downhill very quickly. But I'll stop there.
Thank you. Over to you, Dre.
Yeah, I think go back to what Tulip said, and has sort of been repeated by others, that AI, depending on the prompts being put in, can be art, right? It's those prompts that shape it. Um, at some point in the future, I don't think you can rule out that it would be able to create something on its own. I don't think we're there yet. Um, and I also don't think it's quite at the point where it's going to replace artists. There's always been technologies that come along, whether it's better paints or brushes or film cameras and digital cameras and different software. So there's always something else coming along, but most of those other mediums still exist. And um, there's a value in going out and creating the art yourself, for yourself and for those with you. Um, and if you want to do that by using a program, an AI, that is another way to create. But I don't think it has to necessarily replace anything else. I- the issue with it becomes when people don't understand that it's artificially created. Um, if you're looking at it just for the art value, the art sake of it, then that might not be an issue. If you're representing it as this is something that you painted, or you went on this trip and took these photos there, then I think that's a different story. But as far as being able to create art by giving prompts and that, I think we're at the state that yeah, we can consider that art right now.
Thank you, Drake. Quick thought from my side is that AI today is somewhere where computers were a few decades ago. I remember when Bill Gates said 40 MB is enough for any and everything you need. I think AI is somewhere near that state. In fact, it's hardly even coming. What we have right now is more of just chatbots and GPT. So maybe a decade from now or 5 years from now, I wonder where we'll be. Any other thoughts, anybody? On the value of art? Yes, Joe.
Back on poetry again, my recent introduction to poetry and sort of the craft. One of the things that I really found was fascinating was a big part of the discipline was to consciously think about your audience and to quote unquote build space for your audience in your art. It's almost like reaching out to sort of create a connection. And for a lot of people, when they think of poetry, just to zero in on that form of art, as almost like a journal entry, it's purely the expression of their experience, and that is one thing. And of course, my tough taskmaster in the world of poetry says, no, that's a journal entry. That's not poetry. Poetry is a consciously crafted work of art that intentionally helps the reader go through a similar journey. So, and this comes back to again the nerdiness of Gadamer about art as being very what we call dialogic. In other words, it's sort of an interplay between the creator and the viewer, or the creator, the poet, and the reader, and that in fact what constitutes the work of art is what happens in that event between them. And even more obscurely, if we take the word dialogic and look at what it actually means through. It means doing something together. It's more about the outcome and what is produced rather than sort of just two people talking at each other. It's actually at what can transcend. But I'll stop there.
Thank you, Joe. Yes, Paulina.
And just another thought about AI. I mean, I still look at it only as a tool. And even 30 years from now, by itself, it will never be able to make art. That's my opinion. Because art, in so many ways, is a depiction of your inner world, your inner experience. So, AI, as good as it gets, it will never be able to have that inner experience. It's not alive. That's so um, it doesn't have the levels of consciousness that a human being does. So I see more possible, part of my thought, a dolphin creating art, an elephant. They may have more of an inner life than an AI. So yes, we can create a lot of AI prompted art, but it's still not AI's production. It's still our production. We are making it through AI. So that's my point.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, Joe.
Okay. You want to go? You want to go on AI? You asked for it. No, actually, I agree entirely. And in fact, as I've shared recently, my PhD research is basically about using AI in, of all things, management education. And in that scenario, we're not looking at AI doing anything, usurping any responsibility. In fact, its only use is as a sounding board so that the people can think better. So if we have risks with AI, it's that it's not the artificial intelligence that's the problem, it's human stupidity. And the general trend that we have of just offloading responsibility at wherever we figure we can put it and get away with it. But in the work that I'm doing, it's fascinating because if I can pull things, so life experiences from managers, they're working in managing a factory or they're doing this and they're doing, we can pull all this, I abstract it so it's not discernibly from Bob or Harold or Sheila. Like it's very, but then I can put it into an AI, and then we basically can talk to the AI and say, what does the group think? How do these, where are we having common problems? And it never becomes back as a spotlight on what did you say, Joe? But it sort of allows us, it provides this huge mirror for us to then interact with. So in fact, as you said, Paulina, it's actually AI helping the people do something better. And in that particular case, back to the art of war, Ben, um, one other form, like we can look at art in very specific experiential, even therapeutic contexts, or we can expand it out and say, wouldn't it be great if we could, approach the world, writ large or very big things with an artistic view to making them better? And so this work that I'm doing, it's like trying to use AI as a laddering device to get people to think better. Stop again.
Thank you, Joe. That was enlightening. Any other thoughts, anybody? Looks like we are at the end of our discussion. Thank you, everyone. It's been entertaining and enlightening. It was fun. Thank you so much.